Hello, good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today I bring you guys my top 5 premium ships of 2021 list. Now, I normally make this video toward the end of the year where we take a look back at what happened during the year in the game, and I choose the premium ships that kind of had the most influence over, well, what happened in the game and kind of represent what the year was like for the game and the moments that stand out to us the most when we take a look back and look at how the year went for World Warships and the community and such. So these ships are by no means the top 5 best premium ships of 2021, but they are more than certainly the most memorable ships of 2021. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start off with number 5, which is the Tier 6 premium Soviet battleship, the Novorossiysk, or the Soviet Julius Caesar. Yes, this year the Julius Caesar finally returned to the game in the form of the Novorossiysk, which I just put my review out for that ship a few days ago. She is the Julius Caesar up tier to tier 6 and essentially the balanced version of the Caesar, which Wargaming tried to do that back, I don't think it was this year, I think it was last year. They tried to move the Caesar up to tier 6 from tier 5 and mess around with it and try to re-release it because it's a ship that many people want for, well, how good it is and for the historical value of the ship. But that didn't go over well with the current owners of the Caesar, so they shelved that idea until they could get the Novorossiysk out, which is the Julius Caesar after World War II was given to the Soviet Union as war reparations. So the ship in game is a pretty decent ship. It's an interesting take on the already existing Julius Caesar. It's essentially a battle cruiser version of that ship. They did a little tweaking here and there with some stats on the ship, like the guns no longer have the 1.9 sigma of the Julius Caesar, rather 1.4 sigma, which is quite bad, but she does have battle cruiser dispersion, which helps rein in that gun accuracy at some times. But other times, not so much. But overall, in my opinion, she's a pretty decent free boat that you can, I believe, get for one more day after this video goes up via the combat missions. They haven't said if she's going to be added to the premium shop or not, but this is certainly a big deal for this year, the return of the Caesar. Alright, going on down to number 4, we have the Tier 6 Premium Italian destroyer, the Leone, or the Lion. This is like, I think, the 4th ship in game named after that cat. But yeah, the Leone, the Lion, whatever you want to call it. This ship had been in development for 5 years. 5 freaking years, y'all. And she finally came out this year to an amazing round of disappointment. This is probably one of the worst Tier 6 DDs, unfortunately. As much as this ship was hyped up as the first Italian destroyer to get into the game, that wound up being, well, the Apollo Emilio, which is a fantastic boat in my mind. But this ship it's got a lot of guns. It's got 8 guns, but it's got an 8-second reload time, which wouldn't be bad because that is a lot of guns to have on a Tier 6 DD. And when you can hit a target, they do a pretty darn decent amount of damage if you hit the right spot on the ship and all your shells pit, especially with obviously AP, but with the HE2 you can easily chunk ships for 4 to 6k a salvo, which isn't bad by tier 6 DD gun levels. But if you can't tell from the replay in the background, this ship is also the beginning of the Italian space program with the arcs on these guns. They are terrible. They make the American DDs blush with how bad the gun arcs are, the shell arcs are on this boat. And yeah, it's frustrating to use because of that, which then means you have to use it at close range, and it's not that great at close range. I mean, the match watching the background actually had a pretty good match in this. This is a Tier 6 match. You can try imagining playing this ship in a Tier 8 game, and that's absolutely terrible. Only has 4 torps too, but they do reload in sub 60 seconds, so that certainly isn't bad at all. But yeah, just unfortunately a pretty big disappointment for what could have been a fantastic Tier 6 premium ship, and one that was of course hyped up to no end, being that after 5 years we're finally getting the Leon in game, and then it comes out to a solid thud. Yeah, but don't worry, it gets a little crazier after this with number 3, the Tier 6 premium not Italian, Japanese battleship, the Issei, the first ever hybrid ship in game. Also a real steel ship, and there has been quite some hype for the Issei over the years. Many players have been saying, hey, we want the Issei in game. It's a really unique ship. If you guys don't know, the Issei is a converted Japanese battleship during the Second World War. Japan was getting pretty desperate for carriers, so they started to convert ships like the Issei into hybrid battleships and aircraft carriers. Now, the Issei in game was released, and boy, tier 6 matches were quite fun with the Issei for quite some time. You had quite a few triple Issei divisions, which is pretty toxic, not gonna lie, but that did fortunately die down to where we had a bit more chilled out tier 6 matches now. But anyway, the Issei wound up being a pretty interesting boat, a decent boat by itself. You still have the eight 356mm guns of the Issei itself before her conversion, which are pretty accurate in and of themselves. The rear turret angles are pretty terrible because, well, you get that big old flight deck back there getting in the way of the number 2 and 3 gun turrets, so that does cause some problems. But the ability for a battleship to launch torpedo planes that drop 8 torpedoes in all. Granted, if you do manage to get all 8 torpedoes to hit, which is pretty hard to do, it is the equivalent of one Hatsuharu torpedo, so it's not a ton of damage being done, but the planes do force the enemy ships to either turn or eat the torpedoes, and you do that right, you can get them to show you broadside, then you can follow that up with your 8 356mm guns, which can provide quite the hurt at that tier. Well, really, against anything that shows you broadside. So the Issei, beyond being, of course, a very historical and interesting ship, launched an era of hybrids in the game, and we quickly got quite a few follow-ups to that, quite quickly too, and we'll probably see more in the future as well. And that was all harkened in by the Issei in this year. Alright, moving on down to number 2, we have the tier 6 British battlecruiser, the Repulse. 2021 finally saw the Repulse get added to the game. A long awaited British battlecruiser that has been, you could probably find forum posts going back to the beta days asking for the Repulse in game. We finally got it this year for free too, as part of the Marlborough's Dockyard, the 18th phase of that dockyard. What we wound up getting was a continuation of the developing battlecruiser formula that works out quite well for the Repulse, in my opinion. Is it always fantastic? No, it is very much a battlecruiser, what should be a battlecruiser in my mind. A lightly armored, large ship that's about the same size as a battleship, but much faster, much more maneuverable, which the Repulse is very much so. She only has a 16mm bow and stern armor with no type of wraparound icebreaker bow like we see on the German battle cruisers. She's quite quick. You can get her up to, if you really want to be really memeing with her, you can get her up to, I believe, almost 40 knots if you take the swift and silent skill on top of the engine boost. I think you get her up to like 38, 39, almost there, which is pretty ridiculous for a tier 6 ship. But she goes 33.9.3 knots base with the speed flag equipped, and then you throw the engine boost consumable on there, on top of her pretty darn good rudder shift time of 14.4 seconds base, which you can, again, put the rudder mod on there. You have a fantastic, just really fantastically maneuverable battle cruiser here with 6 15-inch guns, and the Repulse has, I would say, the most accurate guns up to tier 8 in the game, which you really do need with a ship with just 6 15-inch guns. And the Repulse is also potentially giving us a glimpse into what may become the British battlecruiser line, and if it's more of this, then I'm very interested to see how this line comes out in full. But yes, finally we got the Repulse in game after all these years of waiting for her to be added. Alright, moving on down to our first honorable mention ship, the Tier 9 Premium American Battleship, the Kearsarge. This ship is stupid. This ship is really stupid, and probably one of the most ridiculous hybrids that will ever be added to the game. I say that now, but God knows what 2022 is going to hold for the game. So the Kearsarge has 12 16-inch guns. They are the 45 caliber guns of the North Carolina, though, and not the 50 caliber guns of the Iowa. So at range, the shells do certainly drag and take their time to get to the target. So that kind of helps balance it out. And if you can't notice too, it does have this ridiculous flight deck welded on top of it. The ship's absolutely ridiculous, but ironically, despite how stupid and ridiculous it is arguably one of the best tier 9 battleships in the game right now, with of course 12 16-inch guns at tier 9 and the ability to launch rocket planes that fire tiny Tims. You get 5 of these planes. Most of the damage that you see that I've accumulated in the video in the background right now was from the rocket planes, because I hadn't gotten used to the slow shells of the Kearsarge, because I hadn't really played her in that long. And these planes can do, of course, plenty of damage. They are the tiny Tims with great pins and a great fire chance per rocket. It's not uncommon that you'll do 14k to a battleship and start 1 or 2 fires in the same attack with the rocket planes. Now, of course, too, with that giant flight deck welded on top, that's a huge spot for any ship in the game to hit and pin. It's only 16 millimeters thick, so literally anything you can see can pin that with their guns, even the 90mm secondaries of the Italian battleships. But yeah, an absolutely ridiculous ship, and kind of just really the pinnacle of the hybrids of this year. And who knows what we'll see next year, but yeah, I can say this is only the 3rd hybrid ship in the game. God knows what's coming next. Second honorable mention is the Tier 6 premium French aircraft carrier, the Bearn, the first ever French CV added to the game. Now, the Bearn is on this list because the Bearn has quite a few interesting mechanics about her that might be showing us what's coming next with CVs. She's definitely more of a support CV because of her patrol fighters. Patrol fighters are the best at her tier. They have a 2-minute runtime. There's a stupid amount of planes in the squadron, 8 I do believe, and they can easily wipe out whatever planes may fly into their patrol radius. On top of that too, they can only spot for 2 kilometers away from them, so that definitely helps tone down the spotting of CVs. And when it comes to the attack aircraft on the Bearn, you have the skip bombers and the AP dive bombers. Both of these planes are beyond specialized to do one thing. The skip bombers are only really good at dealing with cruisers and destroyers if you can manage to drop on them accurately, which isn't really hard with the reticle that you get on the Bearn. But beyond that, they're really worthless at attacking many other targets because they only pin 32 millimeters of armor. So that means for most of the battleships you're going to see at tier 6, most of those are still dreadnoughty style battleships with thick armor all over, they're going to just shatter against the belt. They may start a fire or 2, but that's about it. The AP dive bombers are so specialized to attack battleships, they're literally worthless against everything else except the heaviest of heavy tier 8 cruisers. They will overpin just about every other cruiser you see. You might get lucky if you attack a cruiser with some strange geometry and get a citadel off of it like that. But hyper specialized attack plane squadrons that aren't really good at dealing with other classes, unlike most of the other CVs that we do have in game right now. And of course, again, the first ever French aircraft carrier added to the game, and again, a real historical ship, which is always cool. So finally, we get to number 1, which is the Tier 7 Commonwealth battleship, the Yukon. There was no single greater event in 2021 when it comes to warships than the Great CC Walkout that occurred sometime around August. Well, I would say the entire month of August. The Yukon was supposed to be a ship designed by former CC Little White Mouse, and we've gone over this plenty of times. She was apparently asked to design it, but then apparently also not asked to design it. And then she and her artist, Chobitsu, spent a year designing this ship, and pretty much all their work was thrown out. According to Wargaming, it was miscommunication, which we've heard that excuse 10,000 times from Wargaming by this point. And then just about all the major CCs in the CC program left, and we got kind of slapdash apology, then a big formal apology from Wargaming, and Wargaming has slowly been trying to build back the community's trust over the past couple of months by keeping to their word, and so far they've actually done a pretty darn good job of that. We got the drop rates released for the containers just in time for Black Friday, and the Santa containers as well. We got much more detailed dev blogs. The devs have explained their reasoning for changes a lot more in depth. We've been shown a lot of the sacred spreadsheets that they mentioned so much when it comes to balancing issues. They've been very, very transparent recently with their communications, and it was all started by the one spark known as the Yukon. We're even getting the Sackville camouflage designed by Chobitsu for the Yukon here, hopefully pretty soon. I believe that's coming in the update 11.0, which should be the January update for 2022. So this single ship sparked the biggest PR disaster for wargaming, even surpassing the Puerto Rico PR disaster of, what was that, 2 years ago, about? So, yeah, I could not think of a better ship to personify 2021 in World of Warships than the Yukon. Oh, the ship by the way, the ship by itself is like garbage. I would not recommend getting it. It's supposed to be a more stealthier, down-tiered Monarch without Royal Navy HE or without the Monarch's great rate of fire. I made a video on Monarch not that long ago saying it was, kind of a good tier 8 British battleship, but Yukon, no, definitely not. Stay away from it. Does have the zombie heal though, if you like that, but that is definitely not worth it in my opinion. But anyway, guys, those are my 5 picks for the most prolific ships of 2021. Let me know what you guys think about these in the comments down below. If you had to pick 5 ships to personify 2021 in World of Warships, let me know what your list would be down below. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subs. Just passed 31,500 a few days ago, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday, a wonderful start to your Christmas week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.